Nancy Porter checked her watch one more time as she waited on the front porch of the Doyle family home. It was 7:30 in the morning. The crisp autumn air made her pull her jacket tighter around her shoulders. At 22 years old, Nancy had been babysitting for different families since she was 16, but the Doyles were her favorite. Their daughter, 3-year-old Lily, was a sweet child with bright blue eyes and curly blonde hair that bounced when she ran. The front door opened and Susan Doyle appeared with a warm smile. "Nancy, thank you so much for coming early. We wanted to beat the traffic." Behind her stood Gary Doyle, carrying 2 small suitcases. "No problem at all," Nancy said, stepping inside the warm house. "I brought some new picture books I think Lily will love." Susan led Nancy to the kitchen where Lily sat at the table eating cereal. The little girl's face lit up when she saw Nancy. "Nanny," she called out, using her special nickname for her, Babysitter. "Hi, sweetie," Nancy said, giving Lily a gentle hug. "We're going to have so much fun this weekend." Gary placed the suitcases by the front door and joined them in the kitchen. "All the emergency numbers are on the fridge. We'll be at the Pine Ridge Hotel about 2 hours away. Cell service is good there, so you can call us anytime." Susan kneeled down to Lily's level. "Mommy and Daddy are going on a little trip for our anniversary, remember? We'll be back on Sunday. Nancy will take good care of you." Lily nodded, more interested in her cereal than her parents' departure. This wasn't the first time Nancy had watched her overnight. They had a comfortable routine. "Her favorite stuffed rabbit is upstairs. She won't sleep without it," Susan reminded Nancy. "And she's been a little afraid of the dark lately, so we've been leaving the hall light on." Nancy nodded, making mental notes. "We'll be fine. You two enjoy your anniversary." After many hugs and kisses for Lily and repeated assurances that they were just a phone call away, Susan and Gary finally left. Nancy watched from the window as their car pulled out of the driveway. Lily came to stand beside her, waving at her parents until the car disappeared around the corner. "What should we do today, Lily?" Nancy asked, turning to the little girl. "Color, then park," Lily said, already running toward her toy box in the living room. The morning passed peacefully. They colored pictures of animals, built a tower with blocks, and watched Lily's favorite cartoon. Nancy made peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for lunch, cutting off the crusts just the way Lily liked. After lunch, Lily began asking about the park. "Can we go now? Please, please?" "Let's wait a little while after eating," Nancy suggested. "How about we read one of the new books I brought?" They settled on the couch. Lily cuddled against Nancy's side as she read a story about a rabbit who gets lost in the forest but finds his way home. Lily listened with wide eyes, clutching her own stuffed rabbit. "Again," she demanded when Nancy finished. Nancy checked the time. It was almost 2 o'clock. "How about we go to the park now and I'll read it again before bedtime?" Lily jumped up, excitedly. "Park! Swings!" Nancy helped Lily put on her red jacket and tiny sneakers. She packed a small backpack with snacks, wet wipes, and a change of clothes in case Lily got dirty. Before they left, Nancy made sure to grab her purse and lock the front door behind them. The walk to the local playground took only 10 minutes. It was a perfect fall day. The trees showed their red and gold colors, and the air was cool but not cold. Lily skipped along, stopping to pick up colorful leaves and hand them to Nancy. The playground was busy with other children and parents, enjoying the nice weather. Lily ran straight for the swings, her favorite. Nancy pushed her gently, smiling at Lily's delighted squeals of "higher, higher." After the swings, they tried the slide, the monkey bars, with Nancy's help, and the seesaw with another little boy and his dad. Around 4 o'clock, Nancy noticed Lily was getting tired. "Should we head home, sweetie? We can make cookies and watch a movie." "No, more park," Lily protested, but her eyelids were drooping. "Just a little longer," Nancy agreed. They sat on a bench, and Lily ate a small bag of apple slices while watching. "The other children play." A text message alert sounded on Nancy's phone. She pulled it out and frowned at the screen. It was from an unknown number, but the message made her heart race. "I know where you are. We need to talk. Now." Nancy looked around nervously, scanning the park and surrounding areas. Could it be Eric? They had broken up 2 months ago, and he hadn't taken it well. He'd been calling and texting, begging her to give him another chance. Nancy had blocked his number, but he could be using a friend's phone. "Come on, Lily," Nancy said, suddenly anxious to leave. "Let's go to Oakwood Park instead. They have better swings." Lily perked up at the mention of a different park. "Better swings? Okay." Nancy helped Lily back into her jacket and quickly gathered their things. Oakwood Park was about 15 miles away, in a different town. Nancy had taken Lily there once before, and the little girl had loved the larger playground. More importantly, if someone was watching her, going somewhere unexpected might help shake them. They walked back to the Doyle house quickly. Nancy kept looking over her shoulder but didn't see anyone following them. At the house, she decided to take her car rather than walk to the other park. She secured Lily in the car seat in the back of her silver Honda Civic, double-checking that the straps were properly fastened. "Adventure," Lily said happily as Nancy started the car. During the drive to Oakwood Park, Nancy's phone buzzed several more times. She ignored it, focusing on the road and occasionally glancing at Lily in the rearview mirror. The little girl was singing softly to herself, playing with a small toy Nancy kept in the car for her. They arrived at Oakwood Park just before 5 o'clock. It was less crowded than the neighborhood playground, with just a few families scattered around the large space. Nancy helped Lily out of the car seat and held her hand as they walked toward the playground area. "Swings first," Lily insisted, pulling Nancy along. For nearly an hour, they played without incident. Nancy began to relax, thinking maybe the text had been a wrong number after all. Lily went down the slide at least 20 times, laughing each time she reached the bottom. They had the swings all to themselves now, as other families started to leave for dinner time. As the sun began to set, Nancy noticed a car pull into the parking lot. A tall figure got out and started walking toward the playground. Something about the way the person moved made Nancy's stomach tighten. Even from a distance, she recognized Eric's walk. "Lily, sweetie, we need to go," Nancy said quickly, lifting the girl from the swing. "But I'm not done," Lily protested. "We'll come back another day, I promise." Nancy gathered their backpack and started walking rapidly toward her car, holding Lily's hand firmly. She glanced back and saw Eric had spotted them and was picking up his pace. Nancy lifted Lily into her arms and started jogging toward the parking lot. By the time they reached Nancy's car, the sun had nearly set, and the park's lights were coming on. Nancy fumbled with her keys, her hands shaking slightly. She managed to unlock the car and quickly secured Lily in her car seat. As she closed the back door and moved to the driver's side, she heard Eric call her name. Nancy got in, locked the doors, and started the engine. Through the window, she could see Eric running toward them, waving his arms. Nancy pulled out of the parking space and drove away, her heart pounding. In the back seat, Lily sensed something was wrong and became quiet, clutching her stuffed rabbit that Nancy had remembered to bring from the house. "Where are we going?" Lily asked in a small voice. Nancy tried to sound calm. "We're going on a little drive, then back to your house for dinner." As she drove away from Oakwood Park, Nancy checked her rearview mirror constantly. After a few minutes, she saw headlights behind them, following too closely. She took a sudden turn onto a side road, then another. The headlights stayed behind them. Nancy's phone rang. The unknown number again. She ignored it, focusing on the road ahead and trying to decide what to do next. She couldn't go back to the Doyle house if Eric was following them. She couldn't lead him there. The sun had fully set now, and darkness surrounded them as they drove along unfamiliar roads. Nancy spotted a sign for a scenic overlook on Route 16. Maybe she could pull over there. It might have other cars, people who could help if needed. Lily had fallen quiet in the back seat, tired from their long day at the parks. Nancy glanced at her in the mirror and saw the little girl's eyes were closing. "We'll be safe soon, Lily," Nancy whispered, "I promise." The headlights behind them had disappeared, but Nancy didn't feel relieved. As she turned onto Route 16 looking for the scenic overlook, she had no way of knowing that this decision would change everything. For her, for Lily, and for the many people who would soon be searching for them both. Susan Doyle checked her phone for the 5th time in the last hour. It was just past 8 in the evening and Nancy hadn't answered any of her calls. This wasn't like the responsible babysitter they had come to trust. "I'm sure everything's fine," Gary said, noticing his wife's worried expression. They sat in the hotel restaurant, their anniversary dinner barely touched. Nancy always answers her phone. Always. Susan tried calling again. The call went straight to voicemail. "That's it. I'm calling Frank." Frank Miller had been their neighbor for 8 years. His house sat right next to theirs, and he often helped watch their property when they were away. Susan's fingers trembled slightly as she dialed his number. "Frank? It's Susan Doyle. I hate to bother you, but could you please check on our house? We can't reach Nancy, and I'm getting worried about Lily." Frank agreed immediately. "I'll head over right now and call you back." Susan and Gary waited in tense silence. 15 minutes later, Frank called back. His voice was tight with concern. "Susan, the front door was unlocked. The lights are on, but nobody's here. Lily's rabbit is on the floor, but I can't find Nancy, or Lily anywhere. Nancy's car isn't in the driveway or on the street." Susan felt her heart drop. "What about our car? Still in the driveway? Should I call the police?" "Yes, please call them right now. We're leaving the hotel immediately." Gary was already gathering their things before Susan even hung up the phone. They left the restaurant in a rush, ignoring the curious stares of other diners. The 2-hour drive home would feel like an eternity. Frank called the police as promised. 2 patrol officers arrived within 10 minutes. Officer Maria Diaz took notes as Frank explained the situation. "The parents are on their way home now," Frank finished. "They're about 2 hours away." Officer Diaz looked around the living room. Nothing seemed broken or disturbed. "Do you know if anything is missing, besides the child and babysitter?" Frank shook his head. "I don't live here. But Susan mentioned that Lily's rabbit is usually with her, especially at bedtime. It's right there on the floor." Officer Diaz picked up the stuffed toy. It was well loved, with worn patches of fur. "Let's check the rest of the house." Her partner, Officer Pete Collins, went upstairs while she checked the kitchen and basement. They found no signs of struggle or forced entry. In Lily's room, the bed was made and toys were neatly put away. Nancy's purse and phone were nowhere to be found. Officer Diaz made a call to her sergeant. "We may have a missing child situation. 3-year-old girl and her 22-year-old babysitter. No signs of forced entry. Parents are on their way home now." By the time Susan and Gary Doyle screeched into their driveway, 2 more police cars and an unmarked detective's vehicle had arrived. They rushed inside, hope draining from their faces when they saw the serious expressions of the officers. Detective Kate Simmons met them at the door. She was in her 40s with sharp eyes and a calm manner. "Mr. and Mrs. Doyle, I'm Detective Simmons. We've started searching for your daughter and Ms. Porter. Can you tell me when you last had contact with them?" Susan struggled to control her voice. "I called around noon to check in. Nancy said they were having lunch and planning to go to the park later." "Did she mention which park?" "No, but they usually go to Westside Park. It's just a few blocks from here." Detective Simmons nodded. "We've sent officers there already. Do you have a recent photo of your daughter and Ms. Porter?" Gary pulled out his phone. "Here's Lily at her birthday last month, and here's one with Nancy from the same day." The detective studied the images. Lily Doyle had bright blonde curls and a gap-toothed smile. Nancy Porter had shoulder-length brown hair and kind eyes. She looked responsible and trustworthy, not the type to take a child without permission. "I need to ask, has Nancy ever been late before or failed to answer her phone?" "Never," Susan said firmly. "She's studying early childhood education. She loves children and takes her job very seriously." "Do you know if she's been having any personal problems? Relationship issues, family troubles, money problems?" Gary shook his head. "She never mentioned anything. She seemed perfectly normal when we left this morning." Detective Simmons had her team set up a command center in the Doyle's dining room. One officer worked on getting cell phone location data for Nancy's phone. Another contacted Nancy's parents and roommate. Her last phone location pinged near Oakwood Park at 5:17 p.m., an officer reported. Nothing since then. That's 15 miles from here, Detective Simmons said, frowning. Why would she take Lily that far without telling the parents? Within an hour, Nancy's parents arrived. Harold and Marie Porter looked shell-shocked. Marie clutched a tissue, her eyes red from crying. Nancy would never take that child, Marie insisted. There must be some mistake. Harold nodded in agreement. Our daughter is studying to be a teacher. She babysits for 6 different families. All of them trust her completely. Detective Simmons spoke gently but directly. We're not accusing Nancy of anything. Right now, both she and Lily are missing, and we need to find them. Has Nancy mentioned any problems to you recently? Marie hesitated. She broke up with her boyfriend Eric Jones about 2 months ago. He didn't take it well. Has he been bothering her? She blocked his number, Harold said. But last week she mentioned seeing his car outside her apartment complex. She wasn't sure if it was a coincidence. This information changed the investigation's direction. Officers were dispatched to locate Eric Jones. Meanwhile, an Amber Alert was issued for Lily Doyle, with Nancy Porter listed as a person of interest. As midnight approached, the Doyle house buzzed with activity. Volunteers organized search parties for the surrounding areas. News vans gathered outside and reporters gave live updates. Susan and Gary sat on their couch, clinging to each other, as Detective Simmons showed them a map of the search areas. We're focusing on Oakwood Park and the surrounding 5-mile radius, she explained. We have officers checking all gas stations and convenience stores along the routes between here and there. We're looking for anyone who might have seen Nancy's silver Honda Civic. Around 1 a.m., they got their first break. A gas station attendant on the north side of town reported seeing a young woman with a small child around 4:30 p.m. Security footage confirmed it was Nancy and Lily. Nancy had bought a bottle of water and some snacks. She appeared calm, and Lily seemed content holding her hand as they returned to the car. She doesn't look like she's under duress, Detective Simmons observed, studying the footage. And Lily doesn't appear frightened. The camera had also captured Nancy's car heading north on Highway 16 after leaving the gas station. This gave searchers a clearer direction to focus on. By dawn, the case had gained national attention. Nancy's face appeared on morning news shows, with reporters careful to describe her as a person of interest rather than a suspect. The Doyles made a tearful plea for the safe return of their daughter. Nancy's roommate, Paula Reed, arrived at the police station early that morning. She looked tired and worried. Nancy was supposed to be home last night. We were going to study for our child development exam. Detective Simmons interviewed her in a small room. Tell me about Nancy's relationship with Eric Jones. Paula sighed. They dated for 2 years. He wanted to get married, but Nancy wasn't ready. She wanted to finish school first. When she broke up with him, he kept calling and texting. She had to block him. Has he ever been violent? Not physically, but he has a temper. Once he punched a wall when they were arguing. Nancy was scared enough to ask me to stay with a friend that night. This information made finding Eric Jones even more urgent. Officers located his apartment, but he wasn't there. His roommate said he hadn't come home the previous night. Meanwhile, search teams combed Oakwood Park. They found nothing, until a park ranger mentioned a scenic overlook along Route 16, about 20 miles north of the park. A lot of people stopped there. It has a nice view of the valley. Detective Simmons dispatched officers to check the overlook. The search expanded to include the heavily wooded areas along Route 16. Back at the Doyle house, Susan sat in Lily's room, holding the stuffed rabbit. She noticed Lily's favorite picture book was missing from the shelf. It was the one about the rabbit finding his way home. The detail seemed important somehow. "Detective?" Susan called out, her voice shaking. "Lily's book is gone. The one about the lost rabbit." Detective Simmons examined the bookshelf. Would Nancy have taken it with them to the park? Maybe. Lily loves that story. At the police station, officers were tracking down Eric Jones's cell. Phone location. The data showed his phone had been near Oakwood Park around the same time as Nancy's. This couldn't be a coincidence. As the search entered its 24th hour, everyone was running on coffee and adrenaline. The Porters had joined the Doyles at their house, both families united in their fear and hope. News cameras remained stationed outside, broadcasting updates to a public now fully invested in finding the missing babysitter and child. Then, shortly after noon, Detective Simmons received a call that would change everything. A highway patrol officer had spotted a silver Honda Civic parked at the scenic overlook on Route 16. The license plate matched Nancy Porter's car. Detective Simmons raced to the scenic overlook on Route 16, her police car speeding along the winding road. 4 other police vehicles followed close behind. Her heart pounded as she thought about what they might find. The call had only confirmed that Nancy's silver Honda Civic was there. Nothing about Nancy or little Lily. The overlook came into view as she rounded a curve. It was a wide gravel area beside the road with a wooden fence along the edge. Beyond the fence was a beautiful view of the valley below, trees showing their autumn colors. In the far corner of the parking area sat a silver Honda Civic. Detective Simmons pulled up beside the car and jumped out. Officer Diaz arrived seconds later. "Approach with caution," Detective Simmons said. "We don't know what we're dealing with, yet." They moved slowly toward the Honda, looking for any sign of movement inside. The car appeared empty. Through the windows, they could see that the car was locked. There was a child's jacket on the back seat and a small backpack. "That's Lily's jacket," said Officer Diaz, who had seen the child's room. "And that looks like a backpack with cartoon characters on it." Detective Simmons cupped her hands around her eyes and pressed her face to the driver's side window. She could see Nancy's purse on the passenger seat. A phone was visible inside the open purse. "We need to get inside this car," she said. "Call for a locksmith and get search teams here right away. I want this entire area combed inch by inch." Within 20 minutes, the scenic overlook was transformed into a busy crime scene. Yellow police tape marked off the area. A locksmith had opened the car door, and forensic technicians in gloves carefully examined the interior. Search dogs and their handlers gathered nearby, preparing to search the woods surrounding the overlook. Detective Simmons pulled on latex gloves and carefully lifted Nancy's phone from her purse. The battery was dead. She bagged it as evidence and handed it to a technician who would take it back to the lab to charge it and examine its contents. "The car keys aren't here," a technician reported, "and there are no obvious signs of blood or struggle inside the vehicle." Detective Simmons frowned. So she parked, took the keys, and left the car. But where did she go? And where is Lily? The search dogs were given items with Nancy's and Lily's scents. The handlers led them around the car, then along the wooden fence looking for a trail. One of the dogs, a German shepherd named Max, suddenly began barking excitedly near a gap in the fence. His handler, Officer Ben Willis, called out to Detective Simmons, "Max has picked up something. He wants to go down there." Detective Simmons hurried over. Beyond the gap in the fence was a steep slope leading down into the ravine. It wasn't a sheer drop, but it was steep enough that someone could fall and be injured. "Be careful," she told Officer Willis. "Take it slow." Officer Willis attached a long lead to Max's harness and followed as the dog carefully picked his way down the slope. Detective Simmons and 2 other officers followed. The ground was slippery with fallen leaves and loose dirt. They had to grab onto small trees and bushes to keep their balance. Max led them about 50 yards down the slope. Then he stopped and began barking frantically at something ahead. Officer Willis held him back as Detective Simmons moved forward. "Oh my God," she gasped. Lying face down in a small clearing was a young woman in a blue jacket. Her brown hair spread out around her head. She wasn't moving. Detective Simmons rushed forward and knelt beside the still form. She pressed her fingers to the woman's neck, feeling for a pulse. It was there, but very weak. "It's Nancy Porter," she called out. "She's alive. Get medical help down here now." One of the officers radioed for paramedics. Detective Simmons carefully rolled Nancy onto her back. The young woman's face was pale and scratched. A large bruise had formed on her forehead, and dried blood matted her hair on one side. Her clothes, were damp with morning dew, suggesting she had been lying there all night. "Nancy? Can you hear me?" Detective Simmons patted her cheek gently. There was no response. She looked around the small clearing, searching for any sign of Lily Doyle. The little girl was nowhere to be seen. "Spread out," she ordered the officers. The child could be nearby. As the others began searching the surrounding area, Detective Simmons stayed with Nancy. She checked her for other injuries and found several cuts and bruises on her arms and legs. Nothing that looked life-threatening, but the head injury was concerning. And the cold night air had left Nancy dangerously cold to the touch. "Hang in there, Nancy," Detective Simmons said softly. "Help is coming. Where is Lily? What happened to you two?" Nancy remained unconscious, unable to provide any answers. The search dogs continued to work the area, but none of them picked up Lily's scent beyond the car. It took the paramedics 20 minutes to reach them. They had to bring their equipment down the steep slope on foot, which slowed them down. When they finally arrived, they quickly assessed Nancy's condition. "Severe hypothermia and a concussion," one paramedic reported. "We need to get her to a hospital immediately." They wrapped Nancy in special thermal blankets and carefully secured her to a rescue basket. It would take 6 people to carry her up the difficult slope. As they prepared to move her, Detective Simmons noticed something clutched in Nancy's right hand. She gently pried the fingers open and found a small pink hair clip shaped like a butterfly. She recognized it as Lily's. "Bag this," she told a technician. "It could be important evidence." The climb back up to the overlook was slow and difficult. The rescue team had to stop several times to adjust their grip on the basket and catch their breath. By the time they reached the top, an ambulance was waiting with its doors open. The paramedics loaded Nancy inside and sped off toward Riverside. Hospital sirens blaring. Detective Simmons turned to the search coordinator. "Any sign of the child?" "Nothing yet," he replied grimly. "We have teams spreading out in all directions, but so far no one has found any trace of her beyond the car." Detective Simmons looked out over the vast wooded area surrounding them. Finding a small child in that wilderness would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. But they had to try. "Bring in the helicopter," she ordered. "And I want every available officer and volunteer here within the hour. Lily Doyle is out there somewhere, and we're going to find her." Back at the Doyle house, Susan and Gary waited anxiously for news. When Detective Simmons called to tell them they had found Nancy but not Lily, Susan collapsed into Gary's arms, sobbing. "What does it mean?" she cried. "Where is our baby?" "We don't know yet," Detective Simmons said honestly. "Nancy is unconscious and being taken to Riverside Hospital. She has a head injury and was very cold from spending the night outside. As soon as she wakes up, we'll get answers." "We're coming to the hospital," Gary said firmly. "I'll meet you there," Detective Simmons replied. At the hospital, doctors worked quickly to raise Nancy's dangerously low body temperature. They performed a CT scan of her head and found swelling around the brain consistent with a concussion. They admitted her to the intensive care unit for close monitoring. Detective Simmons stationed an officer outside Nancy's room. They still didn't know if she was a victim or a suspect. Until they had more information, they needed to keep her secure. Nancy's parents arrived at the hospital, their faces drawn with worry. Detective Simmons met them in the waiting room. "How is she?" Marie Porter asked, her voice trembling. "She's stable but unconscious," Detective Simmons explained. "The doctors are doing everything they can for her." "And the little girl?" Harold Porter asked. "Have you found her?" "Not yet. We have search teams working around the clock." Marie covered her face with her hands. "This is a nightmare. Nancy would never hurt that child. Never." "Do you have any update on Eric Jones?" Harold asked suddenly. "Have you found him?" Detective Simmons nodded grimly. "We're tracking him down now. His phone was in the area yesterday, and we have traffic camera footage of his car near Route 16 around the time Nancy would have been there." Soon after, the Doyles arrived at the hospital. The two families met for the first time in the waiting room, united by their fear and confusion. Susan Doyle approached Marie Porter with tears in her eyes. "I don't blame your daughter," Susan said softly. I know she loves Lily. Marie hugged her tightly. We'll find your little girl. We have to, believe that. As the families consoled each other, Detective Simmons received an urgent call from the forensic lab. They had managed to charge Nancy's phone and unlock it using her fingerprint while she was unconscious. The last text messages she had received were disturbing. I know where you are, one read. We need to talk. Now. Another said, You can't. Hide from me. I see you at the park. And the final one, if you don't talk to me, you'll regret it. All from the same unknown number. Detective Simmons looked up from her phone, her expression hardening. We need to find Eric Jones. Right now. 3 days passed with no sign of Lily Doyle. The search area had expanded to cover 5 miles in every direction from the scenic overlook. Hundreds of volunteers combed the woods, calling Lily's name. Police divers checked nearby ponds and streams. Helicopter crews used thermal cameras to search for any sign of the missing child. But so far they had found nothing. Nancy Porter remained in the hospital. Her condition had improved enough to move her out of intensive care, but she still drifted, in and out of consciousness. The doctors explained that her body was recovering from the physical trauma and exposure to the cold night air. The brain is protecting itself, Dr. Melissa Chen told Detective Simmons. Sometimes after a serious concussion, patients need time to heal before they fully wake up. Detective Simmons visited the hospital twice each day, hoping Nancy would wake up and provide answers about what happened to Lily. She also kept a close eye on the search for Eric Jones. His apartment had been searched, his friends and family questioned, but the man himself seemed to have vanished. On the morning of the 4th day, Detective Simmons received an important call. Nancy Porter was awake and asking for her parents. The detective drove to the hospital immediately. When she arrived, Nancy's parents were already at her bedside. Nancy looked pale and weak, with bandages covering the worst of her head injury. Her eyes were open but confused. Nancy, Detective Simmons said gently. I'm Detective Kate Simmons. Do you feel up to answering a few questions? Nancy looked at her with fear in her eyes. Where's Lily? Is she okay? The detective exchanged glances with Nancy's parents. We were hoping you could tell us Lily is still missing. Nancy's eyes filled with tears. Missing? No, that can't be right. She was with me. We were together. You were found alone, Nancy. At the bottom of a ravine near the scenic overlook on Route 16. Do you remember going there? Nancy closed her eyes, concentrating hard. I remember driving. Eric was following us. I was scared. Eric Jones, your ex-boyfriend? Nancy nodded slightly, wincing at the movement. He sent me texts. He found us at the park. I took Lily to a different park to get away from him, but he followed us. Detective Simmons pulled out her notebook. What happened after that? I drove to the scenic overlook. I thought there might be other people there who could help if Eric tried anything, but it was getting late and the place was empty. Nancy paused, her forehead creased with effort. Lily was tired. She fell asleep in her car seat. I remember parking. I saw headlights behind us. It was Eric's car. What did you do then? I got out to talk to him. I thought maybe if I talked to him away from the car, he would leave us alone. Lily was asleep, so I left her in the car. Nancy's voice became shaky. Eric was angry. He kept asking why I wouldn't give him another chance. I told him it was over, that he needed to move on. He grabbed my arm. Nancy stopped, her eyes wide with distress. That's all I remember. Everything after that is blank. Detective Simmons leaned forward. You don't remember anything about what happened to Lily? Nancy began to cry. No. I would never hurt her. Never. I love that little girl. Marie Porter put her arm around her daughter. Of course you wouldn't hurt her, honey. No one thinks that. But the look on Detective Simmons' face suggested she wasn't completely convinced. She had seen too many cases where the person claiming memory loss was actually hiding something. Nancy, the doctors say your memory loss could be from the concussion. It might come back in pieces or it might not come back at all. If you remember anything at all about Lily, you need to tell us right away." Nancy nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I would never hurt Lily," she repeated. "You have to believe me." Detective Simmons left the hospital with mixed feelings. Nancy's story matched the evidence they had so far. The threatening texts, the car at the overlook, the signs of a fall down the ravine. But there was still no explanation for what happened to Lily Doyle. Back at the police station, she received news that made her heart race. A traffic camera on Route 16, about 5 miles north of the scenic overlook, had captured images of Eric Jones's blue Mazda at 6:42 p.m. on the day of the disappearance. The timestamp was about an hour after Nancy's phone had last pinged in the area. "We need to find Jones now," she told her team. "Put out an APB. Check with his employer, his family, anyone who might know where he's hiding." By late afternoon, they had a lead. Eric's credit card had been used at a gas station just outside of town that morning. Security footage showed him looking nervous, constantly checking over his shoulder as he paid for gas and a few snacks. Officers were dispatched to the area immediately. 3 hours later, they spotted his blue Mazda in the parking lot of a small motel off the highway. Detective Simmons arrived with backup as officers surrounded the building. The motel manager confirmed that a man matching Eric's description had checked in 2 days ago, paying cash for a room at the end of the building. He was alone. With weapons, drawn officers approached room 18. Detective Simmons knocked loudly. "Police, open the door!" There was a crash inside, the sound of someone moving quickly. Detective Simmons nodded to the officers, who used a battering ram to break down the door. Eric Jones stood frozen in the middle of the room, a half-packed duffel bag on the bed. He raised his hands slowly. "I didn't do anything," he said, his voice shaking. "Where's Lily Doyle?" Detective Simmons demanded. Eric's face showed genuine confusion. "Who?" "The little girl who was with Nancy Porter." "Where is she?" "I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't seen any little girl." Detective Simmons narrowed her eyes. "But you admit you saw Nancy at the scenic overlook?" Eric hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, I followed her there. I just wanted to talk to her." "Tell me exactly what happened. Don't leave anything out." Eric sat on the edge of the bed, his hands still raised. "I saw Nancy at the park with the kid she babysits. I've been trying to talk to her for weeks, but she blocked my number. I followed them to a different park, then to the overlook." "What time did you get to the overlook?" "Around 6, I think. It was getting dark. Nancy got out of her car when she saw me pull in. She looked angry." "Was the child with her?" Eric shook his head. "No, I think the kid was in the car. I never saw her." "What happened next?" "We argued. I wanted another chance, but Nancy said it was over for good. I got mad and grabbed her arm. She pulled away and stepped back. But she was too close to the edge. She lost her balance and fell." Eric's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't push her, I swear. It was an accident. I looked over the edge and saw her rolling down the hill. I called out to her, but she didn't answer." "Did you go down to help her?" Eric looked at the floor, ashamed. "No, I panicked. I was afraid I'd be blamed for pushing her, so I ran." Detective Simmons stared at him in disbelief. "You left her there, injured with a 3-year-old child in her car, and you just ran away?" Eric nodded miserably. "I've been hiding ever since. I saw on the news that they found Nancy, but there was nothing about a missing kid until yesterday. So you're saying you have no idea what happened to Lily Doyle after Nancy fell?" "None. I didn't go near Nancy's car. I didn't even know the kid's name until now." Detective Simmons wasn't sure if she believed him. "If you're lying to me about the child, I will make sure you go to prison for a very long time." Eric looked her straight in the eyes. "I'm not lying. I did a terrible thing by leaving Nancy there, but I never touched that little girl. I never even saw her." Officers handcuffed Eric and took him to the police station for formal questioning. Detective Simmons stayed behind to search his motel room thoroughly. They found his phone hidden under the mattress, along with about $1,000 in cash. The phone would be crucial evidence. If Eric had taken Lily, there might be clues in his calls, texts, or location history, but if he was telling the truth, then someone else must have taken the child after Nancy fell. As Detective Simmons drove back to the station, her phone rang. It was Officer Diaz who was coordinating the search teams. "Detective, we just got a call from a hiker named Paul Green. He was in the woods about 2 miles from the overlook yesterday evening. He says he saw a man carrying what looked like a sleeping child." Detective Simmons gripped the steering wheel tightly. "Did he get a good look at the man?" "Not really. It was getting dark. But he said the man was tall, with dark hair, wearing a green jacket. And the child had blonde, curly hair." "That sounds like Lily. Why didn't he report this yesterday?" "He was camping in an area with no cell service. He just hiked out this morning and saw the missing child posters in town." Detective Simmons felt a surge of hope. "Get a full statement from him. Find out exactly where he saw them. And redirect all search teams to that area immediately." For the first time in 4 days, they had a solid lead. If the hiker had seen Lily alive yesterday, there was still hope of finding her. But who was the man carrying her? If not Eric Jones, then who? 6 days had passed since Nancy Porter and Lily Doyle disappeared from the Doyle family home. The investigation had taken many turns. Nancy had been found injured but alive. Eric Jones was in custody, admitting to causing Nancy's fall but denying any knowledge of what happened to Lily. And now a hiker had reported seeing a man carrying a child who matched Lily's description. Detective Kate Simmons stood in the forest with Paul Green, the hiker who had made the report. He was a tall man in his 50s with a gray beard and serious eyes. They were about 2 miles from the scenic overlook, deep in the woods. "This is where I saw them," Paul said, pointing to a narrow dirt path. "I was heading back to my campsite when I noticed a man walking quickly along this trail. He was carrying a small child." "What time was this?" Detective Simmons asked. "Around sunset, maybe 6:30 or 7 rear. It was getting dark, so I couldn't see very clearly." "Did the child seem hurt or upset?" Paul thought for a moment. "The child wasn't moving much, but I didn't hear any crying. I assumed the little one was asleep." "And the man? Did he say anything to you?" "He seemed startled to see me. He nodded and hurried past. I thought it was strange that he was so deep in the woods with a small child at that hour, but I figured maybe his car had broken down and he was taking a shortcut." Detective Simmons looked at the path ahead. It wound deeper into the forest, away from the main roads. "Which way did he go?" Paul pointed. "That way. The path continues for about 3 miles, then splits in several directions." Search teams spread out along the path and into the surrounding woods. They had dogs, thermal cameras, and dozens of volunteers. Detective Simmons felt a mix of hope and fear. If the man Paul saw was not Eric Jones, who was he? And why would he take Lily? Back at the police station, officers were checking Eric's phone records and location history. His story seemed to match the evidence so far. His phone had been at the overlook when Nancy fell, and then it moved away quickly. There was no sign that he had gone deep into the woods where the hiker had seen the man with the child. Meanwhile, Nancy Porter had been released from the hospital. Her parents took her to their home, away from the press and curious neighbors. She still couldn't remember anything after falling down the ravine, but she insisted on helping with the search for Lily. "I need to do something," she told Detective Simmons over the phone. "This is killing me. I was responsible for her." "The best thing you can do right now is rest and try to remember," Detective Simmons said gently. "Your brain might be blocking the memories because they're traumatic. Give it time." As evening approached on the 6th day, the search teams in the woods made an important discovery. About 4 miles from where Paul had seen the man and child, they found an old hunting cabin. It was small and run down, but someone had clearly been there recently. Fresh footprints marked the dirt around the door. Officer Ben Willis and his search dog Max approached the cabin cautiously. Other officers surrounded the building, weapons ready. There was no vehicle nearby, no sign of anyone outside. "Police, come out with your hands up," Officer Willis called. There was no response. He signaled to the other officers and they moved. Closer. Max began barking excitedly, pulling at his leash. He had picked up a scent. Officer Willis tried the door. It was unlocked. He pushed it open slowly, his gun drawn. "Police! Show yourself!" The cabin was quiet. It had just one room with a small wood stove, a table, 2 chairs, and a narrow bed. In the corner, on the bed, wrapped in several blankets, was a small figure with curly blonde hair. "Lily," Officer Willis called softly. The little girl sat up, her eyes wide and frightened. She clutched a stuffed rabbit, not her own but a new one. She looked pale but unharmed. "It's okay, sweetheart," Officer Willis said, holstering his gun and approaching slowly. "We're here to take you home to your mommy and daddy." Lily looked around the cabin fearfully. "Where's the man?" "What man, sweetie? Can you tell me about him?" Lily pointed to the door. "He said he would bring my mommy. He said to stay here and be quiet." Officer Willis lifted the little girl gently, wrapped in her blanket. "You're safe now. We're going to take you to your parents." Outside, he handed Lily to a female officer while he radioed Detective Simmons. "We found her. Lily is alive and appears unharmed. No sign of her abductor, but the cabin looks recently used." Detective Simmons felt a wave of relief wash over her. "Bring her to the station. I'll call the Doyles and have an ambulance standing by to check her out." Within an hour, the woods around the cabin were filled with police officers and forensics technicians. They found food wrappers, water bottles, and a backpack containing men's clothing. On the table was a disposable phone, not Eric's, that would be crucial evidence. At the police station, Susan and Gary Doyle hugged their daughter tightly, tears streaming down their faces. Lily seemed confused but not traumatized. The doctor, who examined her, said she was dehydrated and hungry but otherwise in good health. "Can you tell us what happened, Lily?" Detective Simmons asked gently, after the little girl had been checked by the doctor and had some food. "Nancy fell down," Lily said simply. "She got hurt. I was in the car. The man came." "What man, sweetie? Do you know him?" Lily shook her head. "He was Nancy's friend. He said Nancy got hurt and he would help. He took me to the house in the woods." "Did he hurt you or scare you?" "No. He gave me food and a new bunny." She held up the stuffed rabbit. "He said to stay quiet and he would bring my mommy soon." Susan Doyle hugged her daughter close. "You're safe now. You're home." Detective Simmons stepped out to take a call from the forensic team at the cabin. They had found fingerprints that didn't match Eric Jones. They belonged to someone else in the system, a man named Daniel Porter. "Porter?" Detective Simmons repeated. "Any relation to Nancy Porter?" "Yes," the technician confirmed. "He's her older brother." Detective Simmons was stunned. Nancy had never mentioned a brother during the investigation. She immediately called Nancy's parents. "Do you have a son named Daniel?" she asked Marie Porter. There was a long pause. "Yes," Marie finally admitted. "But we haven't seen him in years. He has problems, mental health issues. He was in a facility until 6 months ago." "Why didn't you mention him before?" "We didn't think he could be involved. He lives in another state. We haven't even told Nancy that he was released." Detective Simmons drove to the Porter home immediately. Nancy was sitting in the living room, still pale but alert. Her parents looked worried and ashamed. "Nancy," Detective Simmons said carefully, "do you have a brother named Daniel?" Nancy's eyes widened. "My brother? Yes, but he's been in a psychiatric hospital for years. He had episodes where he'd get confused about what was real." "When did you last see him?" "About 5 years ago, before he was committed." "Why? What does this have to do with Lily?" Detective Simmons took a deep breath. "We found Lily. She's safe and unharmed." Nancy burst into tears of relief. "Thank God. Where was she?" "In a hunting cabin in the woods. And we found evidence that the person who took her there was your brother, Daniel." Nancy looked shocked. "That's impossible. Daniel is locked up, and he doesn't even know Lily." Marie Porter spoke up, her voice shaking. "He was released 6 months ago, Nancy. We didn't tell you because we didn't want to worry you. He's been living in a halfway house in the next county." Harold Porter added, "He's been doing well on his medication. His doctors said he was making Good progress. Nancy stared at her parents in disbelief. You should have told me, but I still don't understand. How would Daniel even know about Lily? Detective Simmons had a theory. Your social media. You've posted pictures of yourself with Lily, haven't you? Nancy nodded slowly. Yes, I love that little girl. I often post about the children I babysit. We think Daniel may have been following your life online. When he saw on the news that you were missing with a child, he might have gone looking for you. It all started to make sense. Daniel must have arrived at the Overlook after Eric left. He found Lily alone in the car and took her, thinking he was protecting her. Within hours, police located Daniel Porter at a bus station 30 miles away. He didn't resist arrest. When questioned, he admitted taking Lily, but insisted he was trying to help. I saw on the news that Nancy was missing with a little girl, he explained. I went looking for them. When I found the car with the child inside and no Nancy, I knew I had to protect her. I was going to call the police, but then I got scared. They would blame me. I thought if I kept her safe for a while, then left an anonymous tip. In the end, Daniel Porter was charged with kidnapping, though his mental health history and the fact that he had not harmed Lily would be considered in his case. Eric Jones faced charges for assaulting Nancy and leaving the scene of an accident. Nancy, Porter was fully cleared of any wrongdoing. The investigation showed she had done everything possible to protect Lily, even putting herself in danger. 1 week after being reunited with her parents, Lily Doyle sat in her living room with Nancy, who had come to visit. The little girl showed Nancy her new stuffed rabbit, placed right beside her original one. 2 bunnies now, Lily said happily, seeming to have recovered quickly from her ordeal. Nancy hugged her gently. Yes, 2 bunnies, and they'll always keep you safe. For the Doyle family, the Porter family, and everyone involved in the search, the nightmare was over. The missing babysitter had been found. The child,